on the road to reassembly now. Next up, we're going to put the alternator back in place. So now we can get it in here. And of course, plug it in. Make sure that's in there and locked in. So the other one was a, there, it'll rest on there hopefully. It's going to be really easier to wire it at this point. Okay. Now just bolt the alternator, the nut back on for the main power wire for the alternator. 10mm. Snug. Don't have to go crazy on this thing. You're mounting in a little plastic housing, you want to break it. Okay, next up is this alternator bracket. Okay, after you wrestle this thing for a while, finally it goes into place. Now we just have to bolt it down. There's the three 15mm bolts on the bottom. There's the 15 that sits on top of the water pump here. And then there's that one bolt in the back. It's going to be a bit of a chore to get in there. Okay, 3 alternator bracket bolts. I may have said 15, they're actually 12. And let's get one of them started. Not real concerned on torque specs on a part like this. I'm good and snug. So we're going to do the upper bolt for the water pump. That's a 12mm, and we'll just tighten that up with a wrench. The next one, of course, is this one that's way back behind here. That's going to be a bit of a challenge to get started. Actually, I got it started already. It always amazes me how much easier it is to put things back together. Of course, you're always dealing with the torqued bolts when you're taking it out. Okay, so next up is the cam sprocket. Seat it in all the way. The bolt, there's also a hole in the washer. It lines up with the hole in a little peg that came out. Okay, now this one's a torquing operation here. It's 70 foot-pounds. And it's also a holding operation. Let's get it back in alignment position here. So we break our bar back out that we had before. Stick it in a couple of holes. We've got the timing marks back lined up again. It had slipped out a little bit. This is 70 foot-pounds. Required torque on this. So I'm going to get my torque wrench out for this one. So I'm able to hold this with one hand. With my left hand, with my right hand. Apply some torque. 60. Looks like we're there. Still lined up. Done. Okay, this is a real good time to put this map sensor bracket back in. As you might recall, this one bolt is kind of hidden behind the alternator. So once the alternator's in place, you can't really get it in there. So we'll put this in first. And then behind there, there's another bolt. The 12mm behind here. Get that one tightened up. Put the air hose back on. And 15mm in the back will have to be done next. Okay, so next let's tap this alternator back into place. You gotta work it into place. You gotta earn it. Wouldn't want it to be too easy now, would we? Perhaps it would be better to fit the long one in the front first. This guy got himself out of position a little bit. Tap him in there. Run that long bolt through there. Okay, so we'll put the long bolt in there. Of course, it's only going to go so far without a little bit of persuasion. There we go. Get the 15 millimeter nut on the other end. I'll torque those down. I believe it's around 20 foot-pounds. So now I would imagine we'd be able to get this back bolt to the alternator in there with no trouble whatsoever. Ooh, I think I just made contact. We have contact. It's going in. Okay, torque this upper alternator. Long bolt. It's about 20 foot-pounds. Kind of thing I do by feel. It's not hypercritical. Okay, so we're ready to install the belt. Before we do, make sure all 3 timing marks are lined up. The sprocket's lined up with the tick mark that's on the back plate. This camshaft sprocket's also lined up. And down here we have the crankshaft sprocket lined up with the mark on the oil pump. So at this point we're going to begin the install. Okay, we're going to mount the new timing belt. I'm going to start on the camshaft. I'm following a Haynes manual here. Okay, after the camshaft, we're going to keep this is the tension side, so I'm going to make sure it's absolutely tight on this side. Go down around the water pump, and then finishing up over here on the firewall side cam sprocket. Make sure everything is still lined up. Okay, we're lined up on that cam. We're lined up on the rear cam. And of course we're still lined up on the crank sprocket. This cam and that cam. That's good. Okay, now we can apply tension to the belt. Okay, now I'm going to reinstall the spring. Back on this nipple that's on the water pump here. With the tension back on, we've got the spring, we've got this tensioner loose right now. Now we're going to take this thing for a spin twice around and double check our positions. What we're also looking for here is any excessive tension or difficulty here that would indicate that our timing is off. At the end of this 2 revolution trip, we'll check again. Now there are points where the tension gets great here. Okay, there's 1 revolution. Okay, we're almost there. Getting back to where we're lined up, I'm watching the camshaft, or the crankshaft, and the tick mark on the oil pump. Okay, it's back in alignment. Now I'm going to check the cams up above, and they're both still right on. So we're going to call that good. At this point, we can torque this tensioner down, and the proper torque for that is 20 foot-pounds. Feels like our belt tension is fine, plenty of tension on it. So we'll torque that to 20. Now as we torque this, we want to hold the tensioner as well. We don't want it moving to an even tighter position. Okay, so there's 10. 20 foot-pounds. Okay, we're going to install the lower timing belt cover next. These 4 bolts are all the same here, and they go in here, here, here below the water pump, up here at the V, and then there's that one that goes by the firewall side, upper cover. Okay, so here we go. Another small one down here. And the 5th one goes up here, right between the V-bank. And these are just 10 millimeters. These are torqued to the inch-pounds, so you don't need to go nuts here. Okay, next up is this little cover. It's over the crankshaft. It's like some sort of little dust seal. And then the balancer, which goes in a keyway. There we are. Okay, with the balancer on there, now it's time to put the crank bolt back on. We'll turn it in. Just finger tight is all we're going to be able to do it, because of course it's going to turn the whole crankshaft once we start torquing this thing. So now we have to put our angle piece on back again, bolt it on to a set of screws on here, and then we can start applying torque to this bolt. So we have this set up now with our angle iron, holding it in place. I'm using a torque wrench. This bolt is a torqued bolt. 100 foot-pounds. So that's exactly what we're going to do with it. 80, 90, 100. 100 foot-pounds complete. We'll take our jig back off, our angle jig back off. So let's place the 2 pieces of the pulley back on. There's a little alignment pin there. And the other. Now we can start turning in the 6 pulley bolts. Okay, so we're going to torque these alternately to around 20 foot-pounds. Let's go back and forth a little bit here. Next up is the upper timing belt cover. Two screws holding the cover in, 10 millimeters. Not much torque on that. Long cover bolt. I don't torque these much. There's one back here as well. Okay, now comes the radiator side timing belt cover, and just 2 10s up here. And this third bolt we're just going to save till later because a piece of wiring, a wiring harness actually attaches to that. And if we put it on now, we're simply going to be taking it off later when we get the wiring back in there. Next is our big Mambo, big old bracket. It takes a little bit of jostling to get this in, because they have to get underneath and move the power steering pump around a little bit. 3 different length bolts that need to go in here to this plate. First of all, this one is 10.1 centimeters. I'm talking the full length, head to end. 10.1. This one's a 12 millimeter. That one goes here. And then there's a third one that goes way down by the crankshaft pulleys. This one's actually longer, 10.7, and it's also a 14 millimeter. So we'll torque all these down.